He didn't say he was stepping aside because he had decided, it was time. He said he was stepping aside to unify my party. That is the president eating his peas.
Yeah, that was the president eating his peas. Joe, you got to eat your peas or you won't get any ice cream tonight. Well, welcome to it. The day after the big Oval Office address. It is the Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka sitting in for my buddy who's on vacation. Honored to be here as always. Thrilled to be here. Especially the day after the historic, 12 minutes, 13-minute speech? The address from the Oval Office. It cost me money because I actually had one of those bets that you can place, one of those political bets that Joe Biden was actually going to resign last night. It was a long shot. The odds were incredible. If he had done it, I would have been in the chips today. But he didn't. He did eat his peas, though. That was one of the more bizarre things I've ever witnessed. Joe Biden eating his peas. Seriously, that's what the CNN anchor John King called last night's address. Joe Biden eating his peas. It truly was phenomenal, was it not? And the gushing from the mainstream media is just not to be believed, especially when they've been all in for this guy. And now they seem to be enabling him. And, Donald Trump had some great remarks about it. We'll get into so much happened yesterday. Yesterday was a phenomenal day. We had the hearing. The FBI director was in a House hearing yesterday, and that was interesting because you had a sudden shift. The previous hearing that resulted in the Secret Service director, Cheadle, resigning and bipartisan attacks on her for what her department did not do in defending Donald Trump. Suddenly, everything's back to normal, and the Democrats were back on their partisan side of the aisle again. And what they said to the FBI director for political purposes was really embarrassing and disgusting. And we'll get into that. We will get into that because I pulled some of the clips that you're probably not going to have heard unless you were like me and geeking out on it yesterday. And then we had the address by Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of our greatest ally in the Middle East. The Israeli leader was in the House of Congress, a joint session, although a bunch of whining Democrats did not show up. And Netanyahu gave a soaring speech that, what did the Washington Post, on the cover of the Washington Post today, the headline reads, Netanyahu thunders at critics. Thunders. It looks like there's a lot of people smiling and shaking his hand, as I see it. And there were a lot of standing ovations. It did remind me of a State of the Union address yesterday. And while Netanyahu was inside the Capitol building, outside a bunch of Hamas lovers were desecrating parts of the Capitol, tearing down American flags and setting them on fire, attacking Capitol Police Force members and dragging them, putting graffiti on statues, and the bell that's right outside Union Station just destroyed by graffiti. I'm sure they'll be able to get it all off, but nobody was there to stop these people. And I'm sitting there watching the guy who's spraying Hamas is coming on the pedestal of the statue outside of Union Station. And I'm thinking, is no one there to stop this guy? If nothing else, these are people that are using aerosol cans, and I thought that was all about the environment. I thought they'd be all about protecting the environment. And, hey, you can't have that aerosol can here. You probably have a plastic straw in your drink, too. Pretty interesting to watch it all unfold yesterday. 29 people allegedly arrested yesterday. How many of them were actually charged with anything serious? I know that when Donald Trump was president, it's not that long ago, I can remember that if you went after monuments on federal property, there was a 10-year potential 10-year sentence. I wonder if any of those people will be charged with the similar law that could result in a 10-year sentence. Anyone thinking that's going to happen? No, they're probably all out by now. They've probably all been bailed out by a fund that Kamala Harris may have supported. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but we shall see. We shall see what happens today. And today is going to also be another monumental day. Netanyahu is reportedly going to have a one-on-one meeting in the White House with Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., our president. At least he still thinks he is. And I wonder if Netanyahu's going to be allowed to use the front door. Remember when he arrived on Monday, when he landed, there was nobody really from the executive branch. The president wasn't there because he was still in the beach house recovering from COVID, allegedly. Kamala Harris was out on the campaign trail. And I don't know where Tony Blinken was. The Secretary of State wasn't around. I think they sent Bill from accounting down to welcome Netanyahu. So nobody really welcomed the guy when he got here. He had visits with the families of the Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas, by the terrorists. It's strange we never seem to hear those names out of the mouths of Biden, Harris, anybody, in fact. Nobody seems to be covering the American hostages. But it really was a busy day when you think about it, from top to bottom yesterday. From the House hearing to Netanyahu's address to the protest to Kamala Harris wasn't there because she was campaigning. And there was a little bit of a controversy, as the Australians would say, about the campaign. And what she said and where she said it, and the left is always looking for ways to say that anybody who says anything about Kamala Harris is either sexist or racist or both. And that popped up yesterday, and then we had the address last night, which kind of messed up my night because there was an hour-long pregame on some of the cable shows. They took an hour to prepare us for a 12-minute speech, and they had copies of it. They had copies of it in their hands before the speech happened, which is really kind of interesting. You really needed an hour to preview a 12-minute speech? So then why were they surprised, or so it seemed, at the end of it all? Why were they shocked? I already played you John King's reaction. It was in the very open. If you weren't here at the very open of the show, this was John King over at CNN talking about Joe Biden's address last night.
He didn't say he was stepping aside because he had decided, it was time. He said he was stepping aside to unify my party. That is the president eating his peas.
Eating his peas. He was forced to do something he didn't want to do. That's the implication there. And I think that's right. Over at MSNBC, Rachel Maddow sounded either like she had been crying or she had a cold. Now, there are a lot of summer colds out there. It might have been a cold. Rachel Maddow reacting to the speech last night.
An elegant speech at an emotional and very moving moment for this president, and I think sort of timelessly for the presidency. This is sort of a tentpole in terms of what patriotism and selfless service looks like.
Really? Really? And if you're talking about selfless service to democracy, you wonder what is the message to the 14 million people who voted for Joe Biden. You have to wonder, is there anyone telling the truth? No, I don't think so. And we still don't have Barack Obama's endorsement, and I know the reason why. I'll get into that a little bit later. I know the reason why we don't have Barack Obama's endorsement just yet of Kamala Harris. Over at CNN, Van Jones, who's had a very interesting past couple of weeks. Van Jones, the communist who dropped the radical pose to achieve the radical ends. Those were his words, remember? Remember back during the Obama administration when he left all of the Soros-funded projects to go be the green jobs czar under Barack Obama for just a few days, because once we were onto him, we exposed him. But now he's just gotten a bigger paycheck over at CNN all these years. Van Jones reacted to Joe Biden's speech last night. He was equally emotional. And this is after he's been one of the guys who's basically said Biden has to go.
The kid with the stutter did good. He did good. That's a good man. He fell on the sword. Most heroes, they fight to the bitter end. He fell on this sword. He's an old guy, but the heart's still there.
He's an old guy, but the heart's still there. What did you think he was going to go see the wizard to get a new heart? You're going to go see the wizard, Joe, and we're going to get you a heart and then some ice cream afterward. And it really was amazing last night to watch the media in both the pregame and then the post analysis of it. We did not get an answer. And that was probably the most interesting part of all of this. We knew Joe was out. He told us Sunday afternoon, just before 2 o'clock, via Twitter X. He told his employees, who reportedly were out in the Rose Garden waiting and watching. What, did they have a big screen set up in the Rose Garden? They had a viewing party for a 12-minute, 13-minute address. What did that cost us? I know Jill Biden was there and Hunter was there. A bunch of the family members were there. I wonder if Frank was there asking about his coming pardon. We still don't know the condition of the president. We still don't know what happened after he left Las Vegas a week ago Tuesday. Remember that? It was a week ago Tuesday. Joe Biden was in Las Vegas at the NAACP convention, and it appeared that he had a bit of a breakdown there, and this may have been the moment. I know a lot of people point to the debate, and that makes sense. And when you hear what President Trump had to say about it, it does make sense that the debate was the setup to get Joe out. But he had sort of weathered the storm with the Stephanopoulos interview, then the Lester Holt interview. And then he went out to Las Vegas at the NAACP convention. And this was, until last night, this was the last thing we had heard from him. This was the last time we had seen Joe Biden speaking publicly.
We're going to bring rents down, as I said. We're going to build 2 million affordable homes and cap rent increases of 5% a year so corporate landlords can't gouge. Anyway, I don't want to get going. I'm going to get very upset.
Yeah, you got very upset, and then you were whisked out of there and put on a plane, your plane, the one we pay for, back to D.C. All sorts of rumors swirled about the condition of the president. Medical emergency. Was he still around? Had there been a stroke? Was there a Parkinson's problem? We still don't know. And so the conspiracy theories will continue until we get transparency. That's the only cure, is sunlight for all of that. We'll get into this, and we'll of course get your thoughts on all of this, because it was a fascinating night last night on a historic day. And I just wonder if the meeting today, the Biden-Netanyahu one-on-one meeting today, will have any kind of press avail afterwards. You know, they usually sit in front of the fire in the Oval Office for 2 minutes, a chair on each side of the fireplace. They kind of goad the press into trying to ask questions, and then they don't answer any questions. And then they say, well, we're going to go talk, and we'll talk to you later. And then we have a press conference that isn't a press conference. I wonder if that's happening today. I doubt it. Kamala, who refused to be there yesterday, didn't want a photograph of her sitting behind Benjamin Netanyahu, didn't want to be seen standing for any of the brilliant statements he made. Kamala allegedly going to have a meeting with Netanyahu today at 4:30. So 1 o'clock, Joe, because remember, he was up late last night. He was up after 8 o'clock. So he has a 1 o'clock meeting with Netanyahu, then Kamala at 4:30. we'll see what happens after that. Many things on the agenda today. As I said, it's Mike Opelka back in for my buddy Chris Plant. He's on vacation. We'll take care of business right here on the Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to the Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for the vacationing Chris Plant. Thanks for being here. We've got so much news today, so many clips today, and so many of you today. I'm interested in your thoughts on yesterday and the day ahead and tomorrow, of course. And you're welcome to join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Victor is in Silver Spring, Maryland. Hello, Victor. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Thanks. I'm recovering from back surgery, so I'm at the Regency Care Center here, and I got my electronic girlfriend so I can listen to all kinds of stations. Anyhow, I heard something interesting on a Boston station, the Cooner Report. Apparently, the Kamala Harris team are now trying to scrub everything that she has done in the past, especially all the men that she slept with to get to the top. So I'm warning the Republicans, get this stuff so it cannot be completely erased and we can dig into her past.
Well, Victor, two things. Number one, Jeff Cooner's a good guy. I know him. He's a good man. So I'm happy you're checking him out on occasion, but I'm also glad you're here. Number two, I don't think we should play that game. I really don't think we should go into Kamala Harris, the myriad affairs reportedly she had in order to get positions of power. We all know that she dated, and I'm using air quotes with my fingers, Willie Brown before he had completely divorced himself from his wife, and he was many years her senior, and it appears to have been for political purposes, that relationship. She did go out with Montel Williams. That apparently was one date. I know this because I asked Montel about it years ago. And the other woman in that photo, that video with Kamala and Montel, that's Montel's daughter, who he was bringing to this red carpet event. But let's remember, Donald Trump also was a little bit of a player. So I suggest we fight this on policy, on what's going to make everybody in America better and stronger. And we don't drag it into the gutter. The best way to do this is on the high ground with the Constitution and conservatism as our weapons. That's my take. Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
This is The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for my buddy. He's vacationing. Happy to be here. Honored to be here. Thrilled to be here, especially on historic days. And I know that the House is getting ready to leave town. Congress is getting ready to check out for a couple of weeks. But I'm betting there are going to be a lot of things happening. And we'll talk about what's going on at the White House today with Benjamin Netanyahu coming in and meeting with the president at 1 o'clock and then at 4:30 with Kamala Harris. Just curious, would love to be a fly on the wall. We'll get into the president's brief address that didn't really address anything last night. It was almost a campaign speech. I think they had to be careful about the wording. And they were probably worried that Joe might have violated some rule, but you can't give a campaign address from the Oval Office. You can be presidential, which I really don't think it was. I mean, you decide. I kind of feel like he was listless and maybe even slurring a little bit sloppy in his diction.
In recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition.
So somebody told you? Because that sounds like a defeated guy. That is this close, really this close to a hostage tape, in my opinion. Just my thoughts on that. So many of you are checking in this morning. Happy to hear your thoughts on the speech. We'll also get into Benjamin Netanyahu's address to a pretty much joint session of Congress, but for a couple of whiny members of the Democrat side who left. Bernie wasn't there. I will not be in an address with a war criminal. I am going to be somewhere else. I'm going to be at Ben's getting a half smoke and some fries. I don't know if that's where he went, but he wasn't in the speech yesterday. But there are several of you checking in. Brian is in Front Royal, Virginia this morning. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course, sir. What's up?
So, well, I believe that despite wishing I'd done it last night, you could have cashed in. But before the convention, Joe Biden will resign as president of the United States so that the mainstream media, the Democrats, but of course we're repeating ourselves, will say, Madam President, Madam President, Madam President, every day, repeatedly all day until November 5th. We will have such an inundation of propaganda that they're going to create as Kayleigh McEnany said, a Kamala Camelot or a Camelot. They're going to build her up into the greatest thing, the historic woman president, black woman president. You can't dare vote against her. And that's sort of what we're facing, I think.
Well, the funny thing for me is, and I still have the actual file from 2016 when Kamala Harris was elected to the Senate in California. And the Associated Press headline reads, and they haven't scrubbed it yet, although they might be doing it now. The Associated Press headline reads, Kamala Harris is America's first Indian American senator. And so then you fast forward to 2020, and the same news outlet, the very same news outlet in the same font in a similar section reports that Kamala Harris is America's first black vice president. So
right.
is
they're
she
going to rehabilitate her image for sure?
Well, they got
to scrub the internet and rehabilitate her image and build her up into the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Brian, maybe we've just learned that she's transracial. That she has like so many who have been the grifters, is capable of race shifting at the drop of a hat in order to benefit herself politically and economically. And I do think you're right. We're starting to see the scrubbing begin, and it started a couple days ago when people referred to Kamala as the failed border czar, and the media really, literally jumped on that and said she was never the border czar. She was never appointed the border czar. And I'll play it for everybody in just a little bit. We have a montage of MSNBC and CNN and CBS News, etc., calling Kamala Harris the border czar, and then this week saying she's never been the border czar. So who are you going to believe, me or history, or your actual voices?
We have no border. So I can bet, she really never was the border czar because we have no border.
Well, that's a good point. If there isn't a border, how could there be a border czar? Yeah. What a dilemma.
Or czarina, depending on how you self-identify. She self-identifies as a black woman today.
Well, we can't tell you what a woman is. So how could she be the first woman president? That's another problem they have. Another problem. Thank you, Brian. Very good insights on this. As always, this audience never disappoints. It's very interesting. Let's talk to Cynthia in Nevada. Now, Cynthia, am I pronouncing it correctly? Is it Nevada or Nevada?
Nevada.
Nevada. Okay, because when I say Nevada or I say Nevada, sometimes I get a furrowed brow from people.
That's okay, Michael. When I first moved out here, I mispronounced it, and I caught my share of grief for it. So it's a learning process.
Well, what's going on in Nevada, and what do you want to share with us?
Well, we've got J.D. Vance in here on Tuesday, but aside from that, my comment was in agreement with your previous caller, Brian, that I actually think that the concept of getting rid of Joe Biden with the 25th Amendment should just be abandoned right now. I can't imagine the country with President Kamala and whoever she chooses as her vice president not running the country, even less than it's not being run right now by flying all around in Air Force One and Air Force Two campaigning. It's a nauseating thought, and I just think it's a bad look. And plus, Trump would have to change everything from 45-47 to 45-48. It's just it's a bad.
Oh, that's
concept.
true. Wow, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't even thought about the merchandising end of it. If Kamala Harris suddenly becomes Madam President, which there is a distinct possibility that could happen, then they'd give her, say, 4 to 6 weeks of internship. She'd be the internship president. Then she would be the 47th president, and we'd have to change the next presidency. Or does that count? Or would she be 46.5? Maybe she'd be. I don't know. We'd have to see. Either way, there's going to be an asterisk. There's going to be an asterisk in the stat books about that, no matter what happens. But I don't.
For 6 months, I think we can put up with Biden. There's no point in just saying that he's not running the country and we're in tremendous danger from God knows what could happen. It's going to be worse if she's the president. She's not going to be around to try to run the country. All she cares about is campaigning. So better keep him there. He's in the process of downgrading and destroying his own legacy. So why do we have to further insult him? Not that I have any sympathy for him, but by having him ousted from his position, it's just it's a futile pursuit, and I think it should just be brushed aside. 6 months, we just put up with it and assume that he's going to continue to do what he hasn't done so far anyway, and hope that nothing horrible happens.
Well, that's a good point, and I thank you for your take on that. And when we get to Donald Trump, who spoke on Fox and Friends this morning, he mentioned the 25th Amendment. I know there has been chatter about the 25th Amendment. I believe that requires 2/3 of the president's cabinet turning against him and voting him out. And there are so many people who believe that those folks don't want to lose their cushy jobs for the next 6 months either, because Kamala would probably come in and bring in a new cabinet unless she announced that they were all keeping their jobs. She's told us in the next 2 weeks her vice presidential running mate will be revealed. I'm wondering if it's going to be Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro. Kelly is, of course, a senator from Arizona, and he brings military background with him as an astronaut. So that would kind of go up against the United States Marine Corps and J.D. Vance, which I think would be an interesting move. It also helps with Arizona, possibly, because Mark Kelly got like 40,000 more votes than Joe Biden did in the last election. So he's got a whole lot of popularity in that state. And if he picks Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, that might help in keeping Pennsylvania blue. Although Shapiro's a new governor, and he may not have that much appeal in the Keystone State. We will see. The other thing that is really interesting to me, and watch this from your political playbook, the puppeteers, Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett, the two that are regularly sent by Barack Obama to the White House to give policy directions, I believe, to Joe Biden have started to surface. We saw Susan Rice on CNN a couple days ago, and they have been relatively quiet and relatively hidden. And now, suddenly, they're visible? Does that mean the mask is about to come off? Does that mean the curtain will be pulled back? Does that mean Barack Obama will relive the dream or admit to the dream? Remember, he told us on Stephen Colbert's show if he could have a case where he'd have a person with an earpiece in and he would tell him what to do, he'd have that third term. And it sure feels like that's what we've had in the third term. We'll talk about that. Let's grab one more call before we wrap up this break here. Ivan's in Florida. Hello, Ivan. Welcome back, sir.
Michael, how you doing?
I'm good, sir.
Michael, the Democrats are so invested in CRT, the critical race theory, and DEI, and the racial and gender indoctrination. They will not miss the opportunity. We don't need the 25th Amendment probably won't come into play, I don't think, because I think they'll find a way for Joe Biden to step down because the Democrats will not miss an opportunity to have the first woman president and the first black woman president. I believe Biden is going to step down before Election Day so they can claim those historic precedents. And it'll allow them to pardon Hunter Biden should he have to serve any jail time. And Michael, one other quick comment is the Democrat Party is so racist. They believe that just because they run a black candidate, that all the blacks will come back on the plantation. And just because they have a black president, it's just sad the way they use race, to try to steal elections.
Ivan, are you a person of color?
I am. My mom was. She's passed now. My mom was black and my dad was Chinese. So I checked two of the boxes.
Wow. You're a double check on the DEI box. That's pretty cool. Okay, so as a black man, when Kamala Harris, who is Jamaican and Indian, presents herself as a black woman, how do you as a black man react to that?
I don't react at all because with me it's not about the color of your skin. It's about the policies and the devastation that they've done to the country. I don't think about race. Race is so far down my totem pole of who I am that it's unbelievable. Michael, one last thing is that first Biden and now Cheadle, they want us to move on, from their disastrous errors that they've had, but Democrat Party, they own Joe Biden. They can't get rid of him. It's not over just because they stepped down, just because Cheadle stepped down, just because Biden, said he's not going to run. They want us to forget about it, that they have a clean slate, and they do not. They own Joe Biden. They own all the mistakes. They own all the racial policies and the things that they've done to the country that have taken our constitutional rights from us. And that's what I hope Trump does make race an issue if he debates her. Say, Kamala, how come the Democrats have run these urban cities and there's so many black dropouts. The so many drug, they still have all the drug issues. How come Democrats have not done anything over the last 50 years to improve the lives of the Democrat, of the black neighborhoods? And make Kamala answer that. I think he definitely ought to make race an issue.
Interesting. We'll see if that happens. Very, very interesting thoughts, Ivan. Thank you for being there. Appreciate your perspective and your being there. It is really fascinating how many directions this could go. I still want us to see a president selected on leadership, policy, and devotion to this country and our Constitution. I don't care about anybody checking a box. And that's kind of where I think a lot of people are, even some people who say they're Democrats. We saw, I know Chris reported yesterday, Black Lives Matter is not happy that Kamala's been given this free pass to the nomination. So much to get into today, and we'll get to as much of it as we can. It's Mike Opelka, that's me, in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for the vacationing Chris Plant. Happy to be here, thrilled to be here as we watch the madness unfolding about us. We're going to talk about last night's speech from the president, the reaction from Donald Trump this morning. There will be reactions from the mainstream media, and the focus on Kamala Harris and her record, which is really interesting because Elizabeth Warren was asked about Kamala Harris's accomplishments. And, you know, when you think about accomplishments, especially after 3.5 years as vice president, gee, what has she really done?
What do you think has been her biggest accomplishment since she's been vice president?
Oh, I have to say, since the Dobbs opinion, the way that she has rallied women and friends of women, also called men, around this country on the issue of abortion and just taken it home. First vice president in history to visit an abortion clinic.
The first vice president in the history of this country to visit a place where they kill babies. That's the first accomplishment Elizabeth Warren names when talking about Kamala Harris. My jaw dropped. We knew that abortion was going to be part of the campaign. But for that to be the absolute first thing that Senator Warren, a one-time presidential candidate herself, brings up is astounding to me. But it's also a key inside what these Democrats think is going to put them across the finish line. And the taking of life is at the top of that list. Astounding, jaw-dropping, terrifying, and hopefully eye-opening. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant, and we have so much more to get to right here on The Chris Plant Show.